But this health is also causing a new issue all over the world. The West Nile virus, which should ideally be found in the West Nile, is now found in the US. And a couple of hundred people have died in the US due to the West Nile virus. In Sweden, the tick-borne encephalitis is now being found because of warmer winters. And in Netherlands, the Asia tiger mosquito has already entered. The WHO now says that there are 30 newer resurgent diseases in the past few decades, and this is all accounted due to climate change. The IPCC has a huge chart on this. If this is the ecological change, this is the disease. Like, if there's ocean warming, then you'll have red tide. If you have elevated precipitation, Rift Valley diseases. With every change in temperature, the human body also finds it difficult to adjust. You have increase in the incidence of heat and cold waves and resultant cardiovascular diseases. There are scores of such problems there associated with health. So essentially, having talked of temperature, water, agriculture and health, I now move on to certain mitigation and adaptation. We'll have to do something about climate change. And it could be in the realm of public policy. We could actually ask governments to do something about it. That we should invest more maybe in water reservoirs, or we should. Gurdev Singh Khush was here recently and he seriously advocated a shift to other crops. We actually need new varieties which have lesser days of maturity, as well as the fact of greater resilience to increasing temperatures. We might actually have to look at different crops. Because I repeat again, in case there is a serious crop problem in Punjab, the entire economy is in doldrums. And coupled with it, we have the health problem. But let's forget about policy and we'll talk about people like you and me. And I brought here something which I'd like to show to you. Any idea on what this is? Anybody? This is my guilt chart. This is what I'm guilty of. Climate change. This is my carbon footprint. Everybody needs to know what your carbon footprint is. That we are causing, if we are causing climate change due to our carbon footprint, that how much of carbon footprint do I have? Let me explain it very simply. Basic geography again, but very simple. But this is the Earth. It's got lots of carbon inside. And what we are doing is that we are extracting the carbon in the form of coal or fuel or diesel or petrol. We are using it, burning it, and throwing the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So essentially, every human activity actually extracts the carbon from the earth and throws it into the atmosphere. And when it does in the form of carbon dioxide or methane, that is causing climate change. I wish we could actually pick up the carbon dioxide from the air and push it back into the earth. It's called carbon sequestration. People are working on this. And there are slight ways of doing it, but it's simply the technology hasn't reached that stage. Every activity, everything I do, every food I eat, whenever I go out, whenever I go to school, I work, whatever, I sit on the computer, there is some carbon footprint involved with everything. And to calculate the carbon footprint is not difficult. If you go on the internet and say, calculate my carbon footprint, it will give you various websites and you say how much LPG do you use in a year, how much of oil do you use, how much of petrol, what is the power that you use, and then whether you use organic food, no, yes, no. And finally, you'll get a brief idea on the carbon footprint. You might be surprised that this is the carbon footprint of an average Indian, and this is a global recommended level. And that even my carbon footprint is so huge, despite the fact that I am very conscious of my carbon footprint. A majority of the problem on the carbon footprint is caused due to energy resources, which is fuel and power. So once you know your carbon footprint, we try and reduce it. And not only try and reduce it, the thing is that we should lead a zero carbon life. And how do we lead a zero carbon life? It's either you use no carbon, which is not possible, but you use that carbon and then you try and mitigate the effects by sequestering it back to earth. That may sound a little complicated, but there are steps which we can do to prevent the increase in carbon footprint. Now, how do we do that? most people out here would be using this device, which is the mobile. Have you ever thought of the carbon footprint of a mobile phone? On an average, it requires 4 hours of charging a mobile phone in 1 week. On an average, 4 hours in 1 week. And if you charge the mobile for 4 hours in 1 week, it leads to a usage of 800 watt hours a year. Not a big amount because this is a small energy device, but even then. But what we do is, we plug on the charger and we leave it there. Nokia has now estimated, and this is basically because of public pressure, Nokia estimates that if every Nokia phone, the charger was disconnected the moment the battery is charged, it would yield enough energy to power 1 lakh European homes. And European homes consume a lot of energy. There are other studies which are done here. I'm not sure about this, but somebody mentioned that to manufacture one mobile phone releases 60 kilograms of CO2. And if you replace a mobile phone every year, then you're adding on the 60 kilograms. So it's just being a little discreet and all these things that will make a lot of difference. The other thing is our televisions. We leave it in the standby mode. In Britain, a study was done on the amount of power consumed in the standby mode, and it said that if everybody switches off their television after they've watched the television, the amount of power saved is enough for the entire energy needs of Belgium. That's the amount of energy that we actually share wastage. You go to any of these websites, European Commission, environment websites, or UNEP, and you will find lots of tips. I quote here 12 ways to reduce your carbon footprint. Something like decarboning your life. Walmart decided to reduce the packaging on its items. And a reduction on packaging on 16 items actually helped them to prevent cutting of 1300 peas. Just 16 items. There are lots of things which can be done. For instance, the UNEP says that if you use a hand-wound alarm clock, it actually saves 48 grams of carbon dioxide per day. If you hand dry your clothes rather than putting it in the tumbler, you save 2.3 kilograms of carbon dioxide a day. If you don't use the treadmill and go out on a jog in the park, it saves 1 kilo of carbon dioxide a day. If you take a train to your office rather than your car for 8 kilometers, you save 1.7 kilograms of carbon dioxide a day. And if you simply switch off your computers during lunchtime and after work, 1/3 of the energy consumption would go down. These are steps that you and I can take. What are others talking about? China is firing rockets to induce rain. People are talking of constructing 1-meter walls on the seacoast to prevent the sea level from entering. And this by 1989 cost $109 billion. In the Alps, as I mentioned, you have an insulating plastic being put up. On the Maas River in Netherlands, they've already made floating houses and people are living in it. Why? Because we all know 1/4 of Netherlands is basically below sea level, and they are the ones which are going to be most affected. This year, they're going to build a floating road on the Maas River where vehicles can go at 80 kilometers per hour. The footprint of a vegetarian diet is much, much lesser than that of a non-vegetarian diet. And R.K. Pujari was recently saying that even if you leave meat for 1 day, that is also making a contribution at lessening your carbon footprint. Friends, having talked of these mitigation levels, I go back to the topic, which is Garam Hawa. Garam Hawa was a movie which starred Balraj Sahni. And the title of this talk is actually inspired by that name of the movie. And in Garam Hawa, he was talking of hot winds that were blowing at that point of time. Even today, we have hot winds of a different variety of climate change which are blowing. And at the end of that movie, when Balraj Sahni finally resigns to his fate and decides to become a refugee, his son Farooq Sheikh spots a couple of youngsters who say that we will not tolerate these hot winds and we will organize ourselves to prevent these hot winds from succeeding. There's a need for us to become a Farooq Sheikh today. Thank you very much.